All right. Thank you everyone for attending. We've got a little bit slightly different agenda today, so this is good. Now that the review of the specification is behind us, we just need to go through a review of a few other things. But before we get started, let's go ahead and approve the prior week's minutes. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to go through this. Is there any objection to the minutes as they are written for last week?
Nope.
All right. I don't hear any objection, so thank you for that. Any new folks on the call? Let me just check. Doesn't look like it. Welcome back, everyone. Announcements. So a few things I guess are like to just point out. The call with OSSF went really well. I think I provided an update briefly for this last week, but the call with OSSF went really well. I presented the work that we're doing in Ecma and CycloneDX to the SBOM Everywhere group. Had a lot of questions about participation and that sort of thing as a result of that. So those were all good questions. I've also had some conversations with the Omnibor folks. They are shopping potentially for a new foundation, or not a new foundation, a foundation, because they're not actually a part of one today. They're looking possibly for a foundation. So I made some introductions between Andrew Vanderstock, the executive director of OWASP, and a few other folks. And then, we're possibly going to be looking at Omnibor as a potential additional standard because it's very complementary to package URL. So that's something that we might want to consider as a group because it appears that the Omnibor folks are interested in more formal standardization. So the door is open for that.
Oh, so apart from joining OWASP, they're looking to become TGA3 or something?
Possibly. Yeah, I'm not gonna,
okay.
But
but
the
that would be
possibility is on the
excellent.
table.
Yeah, that would be excellent, Steve. I mean, there's a lot of compliments with the work already with the TC54 and then bringing them on. But of course, they need to see what their needs are the most.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm trying to set up a call with Andrew, talk about OWASP. Again, they're shopping for a foundation. They'll probably look at Ecma, maybe a few other ways to get, international standard recognition. So we'll probably have a few conversations before, we discuss this further as a group would be my guess. Ian.
Yeah, I think circling back around on the OpenSSF presentation. So Steve, thank you very much for doing that. I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think it was really well received. I think people are really interested on what's going on here. And wanted that update on, hey, what's going on next with package URL, especially. I think inviting folks here is always a bit of a sticky issue because you want to invite people who are actually going to participate and aren't here just to, I'll say, voice their opinions. But if there are folks who would be good that this community would recommend, would be a good way to bring maybe some names forward to be invited experts to participate here for consideration. Is it just to create an issue here on the meeting minutes here, or?
Yeah, there's a little bit of paperwork that they need to sign to be either an expert or a observer, right? But if we feel that that individual is going to provide some value, and we want to invite them in because they're an expert in whatever, absolutely, let's bring some more folks in.
But we should always consider if they want to join the community work developing the next generation of CycloneDX, then the community side is where they should start.
Right.
This process is confirming that work more or less.
Yeah, because this TG is I think I think it was mentioned during the OSSF call that the TG stuff that we're working on, the TC stuff is really for the standards geeks, right? If you just want something supported in CycloneDX or package URL or whatever, the community work is basically where you go. Does
And
anybody
Ian,
have other announcements?
sorry, maybe I can make it just a comment, Steve. So Ian, of course, the idea of having invited experts in TC54 should be part of your overall committee decision, because that individual brings in expertise. And if so were the case, then it's a small application form that they have to sign with Ecma just for the royalty-free side. But it's not a big hurdle. But of course, I understand the work on the community side, and maybe that's where they would want to first start.
Yeah, I think again, I definitely don't want to expand this to be too big where it becomes unwieldy. And there are definitely a lot of folks in open source, myself being one of them, who come and voice opinions and aren't contributing as much as they probably should. So definitely don't want to see that happen either. And I wholeheartedly agree. The lower level community is where they're going to have the biggest impact if there's things that they specifically want changed. I did just get questions right on like, what does that process actually look like? So it was more so that I have a mental model of what needs to happen if someone really did want to participate in this specific forum.
Okay. Any other announcements before we dive into the reviews? Okay. Let me go ahead and share the Ecma document here. This is the current version of the document. I still need to post it. At this moment, there are no known issues with it. Okay. This is an update to the one that I posted like yesterday or the day before. I can't remember. Time is very blurry for me right now. But there are no known issues with this document at this point.
Okay, so just to check the process, you take the meeting notes and do all the updates yourself in here, or?
Yeah, Jan has been providing a
Okay.
list of things in the Slack canvas, right? And I've been crossing them off as we go forward. And then Samina has also brought to my attention some formatting requirements of the document that have also been corrected.
Yeah, the right and left pages. So that's why we see 2 pages now.
Yeah. I mean, I can, let's actually just change this because it's weird when you put it in single page view. It actually doesn't look right. But that's the way the template is done.
Yeah, I see page numbers and copyright and stuff. Yeah.
So just a short comment. I think the most important thing is that everybody's in agreement with the content.
Yes.
There are still a couple of formatting issues. I can work with Steve offline. I let you all focus on the content because that's what's most critical. Yes, there is a template that we have with Ecma. It's also a template that aligns with ISO, and it's important that we just make sure that as you build this, you follow that. So as you go further on and do future documents, it's all set up appropriately. But I think we're 80% there. Just focus
I just
on the
want to
content.
publicly say thank you to Steve, because fighting all the scripts and everything to get this done that's impressive.
I've learned more about Microsoft Word than I've ever wanted to know.
I'm going to thank Steve in advance because I'm sure I'm going to give him some comments, and he's not going to be happy with me, but I'm going to try to make him really easy.
Okay. Easy is good. I like easy.
All right.
Okay, the first set of changes that were made was the removal of the IETF style capitals of words like must and should and may and recommended and required, right? Ecma uses lowercase or sentence case versions of these words. So I simply made them either lowercase or sentence case, keeping their precise meanings. I also added, why isn't it in here? Is this the recent one? Oh yeah. Yeah, I also added this because in IETF, shall is a hard requirement. So, which is, I think, a little bit different than US English. US English is like a really strong recommendation, but in IETF speak, it's a hard requirement. So that was added, and then of course the negative form of that was also added down here.
Would it be against Ecma rules if we make them bold or mark them? I mean, I understand we can't use uppercase.
We don't bold also. We also want to make sure that we keep the format aligned with ISO, because in the eventuality that we move forward. So if you are okay with not bolding and keeping it, that would be ideal to leave it that way.
Okay.
We also use UK language. I know there was some text, there was some exchange in the on Slack regarding that. We do need to stick to UK English language. So it's also required by ISO.
The king's language nowadays.
Well, yes, not the queen's.
Yeah, so I found the translator. Oops, where did my document go? You don't want to see my calendar. I found a translator that will go from US English to British English. So, but I'm likely going to have to modify that because the ISO, even though ISO uses British English, it has exceptions for words with Greek origin, most of them with like ISM type thing. So standardization with a Z instead of an S, right?
Correct. Same as
So there
Ecma does
are
that too.
exceptions to their UK English thing. So it's a hybrid.
Why make it easy? Keep you on your
Right.
toes.
Yeah. Well, so the document has all the Z's correctly. It's all the things outside of that we'll probably have to change.
Yeah.
Including, and I think you'll be happy about this, Ole, the word artifact.
Oh, yeah, that I struggle with that.
Yeah. So I need to change any if we use the word artifact in here outside of the specification itself, like in written text, that spelling will also need to change. I'll let folks read through the conformance real quick. I just want, this is not changed. I have not made changes to this, but I just want to get agreement on this is actually what we want.
Just a point of order. We just also need to have notes as some minutes being taken. And I wonder if we can just share the link on the chat so we can all support to make the minutes happen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, can somebody share that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Any objection to this text here?
I just wonder how we handle migration. If someone is, I mean, this specification is an exact version of CycloneDX, right?
Yes.
What if we get another version? Should we, and don't support that? Should we try or should we move away? I think we need to clarify that part.
Well, we're only talking about this particular version right now.
Yeah.
And when we have like a 1.7 or 1.8 or something, we're only talking about that version.
Okay, so we don't want to come up with any rules on how to behave outside of that.
Yeah, I think that that kind of guidance would go into the authoritative guide for SBOM, whatever, right? That would be the place for that, in my opinion.
Great.
Some minor changes to the references. The text up here is the same. The only thing that has really changed is the layout of the references themselves. So that's just an FYI for everyone. And then the terms and condition or terms and definitions. These are the terms that we currently have, right? How do I minimize this? Because it's literally right in the middle of my screen. I can't even do that. These are the terms that we currently define. Are there any other terms that we should consider that are relevant to the specification itself?
I don't see attestation.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm taking notes here.
I hate to say anything, but as long as I see supplier and publisher, I also get asked about provider. So
Okay. So like the provider of a service?
yeah.
Okay.
I also know the word formulation is kind of specific to this. I don't know if we feel like that's defined more in the spec than in this terms list, though.
So we need to add
We have attestation, provider, and formulation.
I'm not 100% sure if we want formulation to be here or not, but it was
Okay.
it's interesting to have this term list because some of the terms are kind of like part of the spec and not like part of this dictionary. I'm not sure. I could imagine it in either, maybe.
Yeah, I'll just say that formulation as one of the contributors confused me because it was already established. I probably would have opted for something like, since it's related to manufacturing, I just call it manufacturing information, or generically just workflow information. But I understand workflow, that's why the definition is important. It encompasses all the ingredients, not just the workflows, but all the ingredients that go into the workflow, basically.
okay.
Yeah, formulation was like a concept that was confusing to me at first as well, but felt like it like anchored a lot of my understanding once I understood it.
Yeah.
It was an interesting term. It came from the manufacturing industry. And it was thrown around in some of the early NTIA meetings by an individual by the name of Duncan Sparrow. Duncan is very active in some of the OASIS working groups. He's retired, but he's still very, very active. He's the most active, like, working retired person I've ever met. But he was talking a lot about the concept of formulation during the early NTIA meetings before CISA was even a thing.
I'll just say that this prompts some maybe future 2.0 discussions about how we want to name bomb things according to bomb types and things because people are, you know, they're all confused by CISA terms and other terms. They need to be grounded in what our Cyclone terms are in terms of looking at the data schemas. Yeah.
Yeah. And note that our definition of provenance actually aligns very well to the NIST 853 definition of provenance and not the Google or SALSA definition of provenance.
Do we want to reference that here? I mean,
was
I think
about to
early on,
say.
yeah.
Is that too spicy? You saying that makes it very helpful for me to understand. But I can understand why putting that in writing might be complicated.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but
Is it, can we
it's
just
what it
hyper,
is.
is there a hyper, can we just hyperlink it somehow? I don't know if that's allowed. Or...
Potentially put it in the like reading guide. That might be like a better spot for it.
Yeah, maybe the authoritative guide.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this was a question I had because this might be better for the guide. But when we talk about kind of what I think of as like the person profiles in this definitions list, as someone who's coming primarily from like a software engineering background, it would be super helpful if there was like an example, which again, maybe that goes into the guide, but like for our definition of like author and like supplier here, they're reasonably short. And I feel like adding like for example, if this shape thing, this would be the supplier or something.
Okay.
I think your instinct that it should be in a guide, I think is correct. I think that T&Ds from specs are just T&Ds and just simple sentence definitions. So
yeah, maybe we can expand the guide in the next revision. So if you have ideas on what to expand upon in the guide, we actually do have a guides repo within CycloneDX. Go ahead and create an issue there and actually propose the change if you want.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't see any terms from the crypto bombs, but maybe we can go through that offline. I'm sure there's a lot of confusing terminology in there.
ouch.
I'm sorry, Matt.
I think we want to focus, at least here anyway, like the terms that are going to be more broadly used throughout the spec. The cryptography terms only relate to the cryptography part of the
Okay.
spec. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think we want to focus a little bit more on broader terms that are used throughout here.
Noted.
Yeah, that was my I'd plus one that if it came to a vote.
Okay. All right, because otherwise, we'll have like a really big list of terms.
And the whole specification will move into terms.
Right.
That's not, but the broad picture, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Cool.
So I'm going to put I'll put some words together. I'll throw them in the Slack channel for attestation and for provider. I will start with what we have in the CycloneDX specification. If people want changes to that, just kind of let me know.
Yep.
This is a new section. This section, section 5, used to be like the first part of what we had in the authoritative guide for SBOM. It used to be, many pages long. I don't know, 10 pages or something. We shortened it down to just these 3 paragraphs because we wanted the copyright notice to appear sooner in the document rather than like 20 pages in, right?
Did you use AI to summarize?
What's that?
Did you use AI to summarize?
I did.
Awesome.
Which is why I want you to look at this. So let's read through this together. And trust me, you will not hurt my feelings if we don't like what it says.
I mean, this describes the core usage today, but maybe not the new stuff that we added the attestations and the formulations.
I'll just say I'm impressed. I like it, and if I were to give somebody like an abstract, I would give them this. I'll be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't want it to be a laundry list of all the things CycloneDX supports, because that actually comes in the next section,
Yeah.
right?
the-
Where
I'm
we
on-
actually talk.
So just one last thought. Sorry, Steve. After
Yeah,
that, After giving such a blanket endorsement, I'll just say that I want to point out, maybe add one word to the second paragraph: high degree of automation. Extensive. I'd like to point out we're extensible.
Okay. All right. So, second paragraph in the introduction, simplicity, making it, this one is high degrees of automation and extensibility.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Okay. Is that what we want? Okay.
I mean, this text places us in the world of standards. So,
Okay.
but good marketing.
Okay. So the copyright notice is next, and then this, which was the introduction in prior documents, is now labeled a overview. And this is basically not one-to-one, but it's pretty damn close to what we actually have in the authoritative guide to SBOM. So if you've read the authoritative guide to SBOM, either first or second edition, this is basically the same text that was actually pulled from the second edition. The second edition only had a few minor changes, and that's really it. But the text pretty much is identical. Let's see here. So here we're getting into the laundry list of things that it does, right? We talk a little bit about each one of those things.
Yeah, I think that to Ashley's point earlier, I'm eager to start. I mean, getting this behind us, so don't want to slow down. But I think that, like, where I see SASBOM and these other things, I think that we have to start relating the elements, to each of the use cases. So, in terms of a SASBOM, who's the supplier, and also describe the unique elements that are brought in potentially for a SASBOM that may not be present in other bombs.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's going to be like a fine line between what we do in the specification document and then what we do like in the guides.
yeah, I'm just saying that I'm just saying that as we do the guide, we should probably use this as a roadmap, these early sections of roadmap of, how take each of the terms and definitions in these examples in 6.3 section and make sure we have a corresponding guide that basically provides graphics. I'm a graphical person, so I want to see diagrams and relationships type stuff.
Right.
So.
Yep.
I love that idea, Matt. I was like in the process of filing an issue about the kind of like personas. I can add that and then I'll link it in the Slack if you want to like add more to it. But I like the idea of doing it for each type of thing here. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. Work has not really moved forward on an authoritative guide to SBOM, but as soon as a lot of this Ecma work is kind of behind us in terms of the CycloneDX 1.6 standard, I will have a lot more capacity to then go back to the guides, and start doing those. Matt, if you want to, we really need an MBOM guide. So let's talk offline on that. I've got some volunteers to assist with a AI ML bomb guide. I'll work with, so a few other folks on a SAS bomb guide. So
Yeah, I think that, my ask would be is I just need a regular call to help me pace and give me feedback and get it on my calendar. So
Okay.
I'd like to get a weekly call going to run the manufacturing formulation bomb guide. So make sure I have it on my calendar and that people who want to come and give me feedback as I put stuff out there, I get it. So I can only do this once. I
Got
only
it.
have to do this once.
Got it. Okay. No, that sounds good. Let's work offline on that. We'll get something scheduled. So these are all descriptions of what we do. Looks like we had a page issue here, it looks like. Okay, so that probably needs to be fixed.
How do you import graphics? Just curious.
What's that?
How do you import these graphics?
I started the call with, I learned more about Microsoft Word than I wanted to know.
Skip
So,
it.
this is at the end of the day, right? The source for all of our documentation is Markdown. However, and all of this, by the way, is all SVG, right? So the source for all of our vectors is SVG because, it's an industry standard. It's supported by every web browser, right? It's supported everywhere.
Yep.
Including partial support for Microsoft Word. The issue with Word is that if you use an SVG in your Word document, when you convert it to PDF, which is ultimately what we're going to do, your vector, your SVG now becomes a rasterized image, right?
Ew.
Yeah, so that's a big fail for me, right? Because you can't zoom
PDF
in.
is PostScript. Yeah, exactly.
But it's great for, I'll say it's great for AI because
So what we actually have to do, part of the script that actually does this, and we do the exact same thing in the authoritative guide, by the way. One of the things that we were doing is we were converting to EPS, encapsulated PostScript, right? And that was supported in Microsoft Word up until middle of last year, right? Word removed all support for EPS because in some cases, right, EPS can be malicious. Well, in doing so, they basically broke every single Word document that embedded EPS, right? Those documents no longer work. The only format that Microsoft supports where the vector image will remain a vector when converted to PDF is their own proprietary format called EMF, encapsulated metadata format, or whatever it is. And that also has some limitations in terms of transparency. So yes, I've learned a lot about Microsoft Word and the history of, how they support or not support vector images in different Microsoft Word formats. But right now, this vector, this SVG is converted automatically to EMF and then inserted into the document. I also had to modify the headers because the headers were not vectors. They were rasterized graphics, and on really high DPI and large monitors, they just looked really bad. So pretty much all of the images in this document are vectors now. So it should look really, really crisp at any resolution.
I hear you learn a lot of stuff you never wanted to learn.
I need to forget some of this stuff because I need to make room for other things.
Here's the funny part. I forgot until you talked about SVG is that I actually worked on the SVG 1.0 standard with Adobe.
Did you really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
The vision then was SVG would replace HTML. That was the vision at the time.
Oh, wow, okay.
That didn't work out, did it?
No, we actually worked with Adobe on creating actual full controls for SVG, hyperlinks, everything you would see in HTML. Yeah.
Hmm, interesting. And let's see, that's really it. The only change on this section is this sentence right here.
So, yeah, do we have any reference to protobuf, which isn't an official standard, and possibly JSON and XML?
Do we have what?
Any reference to what is protocol buffers? Where's the standardization for protobuf?
Well, we don't have a standard for CycloneDX or protobuf, but we can refer to the protobuf standard itself if we want. So
What
here,
was that?
because, you know, we're referring to the JSON standard, right? JSON is
Yeah, okay.
a standard. We could theoretically add a link to W3C for, XML, right?
Yeah, I'm taking notes there, so.
Yeah, but so the question is, normative reference are typically to other standards. So you have to
Yeah.
have, you can provide
I don't
general,
know.
general references, things that are not standard yet, typically just references.
Right. And
Protobuf
to my
is
knowledge, is not a standard, right?
it's a Google thing, right? Or
Yeah. But I mean, if the group thinks adding
Didn't the reference have a link? What was that link next to the table in the reference? Where we
what's that?
started? Wasn't there a link in the table for the,
Those were links to the actual implementations of the specification. So this is the CycloneDX documentation and schema, XML docs and schema, and the protobuf schema.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, what I've done in other standards is that you just have a references section that's apart from normative, and you declare at the top sentence that these are not normative references, and these are for convenience, and then you start adding stuff there. So,
Right.
okay. We took notes on that, and that's
Okay. So what did we decide? Do we want to add XML here? The link to W3C for XML or not?
I think it would be good to add XML.
for
Okay.
completeness, why not?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then I think when you run into JSON scheme, you'll have the same decision point, right? So.
JSON schema.
So the thing is you have to understand that XML and XML schema are slightly different, and JSON schema are different. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
that's my point.
So do we want to add, because right now we're defining, well, JSON schema isn't a standard. It's
That's my point. That's my point. That's my point.
20 years of drafts or
That's what
whatever.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
That was my point. That was my point. So you're gonna have, so maybe you need a references sections for things that are not normative, right? So anyway.
Right.
It's just funny that what we actually rely on for the actual implementations is not normative for, anyway.
Right. I know. It's, yeah, sad state of affairs.
There is an IETF draft somewhere that probably expired, but
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I was out looking for it.
And it's funny. I mean, the entire industry is built upon all these different drafts.
Yeah.
I just
Just-
checked it. It's actually not called a draft anymore. It's now called 2020-12. I was surprised as well.
Hmm. Yeah. We use draft 7. Cyclone uses draft 1.7 for the simple fact that it's, at the time, I don't know if it's still true today, but at the time, it was the most supported in terms of all the libraries that were available. It was the most supported version of JSON schema. that the library is actually.
Well, the rationale is it was the most supported in terms of automated tooling to help us once we created the schema, that we
Yeah.
could validate it and actually generate documents and things from it. So anyway.
Yeah. There's a couple features of some of the later JSON schemas that I'd like to eventually maybe update to. One of the examples of that is there is a either deprecation or deprecated property now that you can actually use to indicate that this field is in fact deprecated. Right now we're using the description for that. But there's a few minor changes like that, so we might want to consider upgrading from draft 7 to.
Oh, there are more advantages. Like I said, I did dumb down some of the schema proposals because
Yeah,
we were using an older draft. So anyway.
yeah. Okay. All right, so I'll add XML here, and then we can discuss non-normative references. I'm not sure where those go in the Ecma documentation, but I'm sure Samina can provide some guidance. And that's it. That is the entirety of the document, because after this is the actual specification itself, which we've completed the review of. So
Wow.
Congrats,
Steve.
Steve. Congrats everyone.
Yes, congratulations to your team. Steve, would you send this version, this document right now, which we've just looked at? Is it different than what you already sent on Slack?
it's slightly different. There were around 30 some odd, 37, I think, instances of descriptions that were missing, and those have been corrected. And other than that, it's the exact same document. So if you are looking at the doc, the one that was on Slack, and you see like a missing description for something, and in its place you have the word undefined, just know that that has been corrected in this version.
So my request is, if you send this, I'd like to start to go through it and match it up with the Ecma template. And if there are things that are mismatching, then I can go back to you, and I know I'm working with the latest document.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send this right after the call. Okay. With that, the next thing on the agenda was to discuss next steps for TG1 and TG2. TG1 being the Koala Transparency Exchange API. TG2 is package URL. To my understanding, Philippe, we're still waiting for some signatures for that. And
Correct.
then, so we're waiting for that for TG2. For TG1, this is very, very greenfield type of work. And for the most part, Ole has been leading the community calls, but I think the next step is either adding or transitioning so that we actually so that we actually start having regular TG1 calls.
I think we agreed on having a hybrid setup for at least 6 months. So we do the spec work, the creative brainstorm work in the community calls, but we start with formalizing, saying we have one TG1 formal meeting per month, and then ramp it up as we move along.
Okay.
But we need to decide on convener and that for those TG1 meetings, as I don't represent a member in Ecma.
Right. And I don't want to be the convener of the TGs. So yeah, we'll need to figure something out there. Question to Samina, do the TGs require a secretary to be present to take notes? Is the note-taking requirements still there?
So it's not as formal as a TC. You certainly want to have some record of what you're doing, but it does not require formal minutes.
Okay, all right.
The TGs report to the TC chair, and when you write your main report, you then write a subsection on each of the TGs based on the information you have from your conveners.
Right. Is another question for Samina, is there the General Assembly is coming up, right? Will there be a report that that I need to do for that?
Typically, you take the report that you already prepared for the Exacom, which is what TCs do. We review them again at the General Assembly because we may have a broader audience as information. And you're welcome to present that. I will make sure you're on the invitation.
Okay. And then, of course, if there's any changes, right? And I think the change is that in terms of formation, right, we actually now have like a TG1 and TG2. And it would be great, especially if I get questions on it, to say that, oh, we've got calls scheduled, or we had our first call, or something along those lines.
Absolutely. So it's on our website. You have formalized the two TGs. It is for the second TG, we just need to do some paperwork, but TG1, if you're already having informal meetings or having it even more formal, it's great to give an update verbally.
Okay. Let's discuss this offline, Ole. We will if there's no objection from you, I would love for you to continue to lead the community meetings. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And no, seriously, you're doing a great job. I truly appreciate it. And let's figure out a time that kind of works for and a cadence that works for the TG meetings going forward. And I'd like to at least have if all the minutes, for example, are captured here in the meetings, right, in this meetings repo, I would love the TG1 minutes or notes, whatever we call them, to also at least be in the same place.
Yep. But then we need to create subdirectories and stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that.
Yeah. I don't know if I have access to that. Ecma TC54.
So I'll work with you offline on scheduling, a time and cadence for TG1. And then I still need to sync up with Philippe on a time and cadence for TG2. I think it's just a matter of paperwork. That's for that, but we'll get past that. There's been a number of questions in the package URL community about Perl types and governance and stuff like that. So it'd be great to kind of, now that we have TG2 established, it would be great to actually start showing the community, what it is that we're doing. How does the group want us to communicate? Normally we've been, well, I guess question. The Zoom links that we used for TG1 and TG2, will those also be, will those be more widely available to the public, or will they have similar restrictions as the TC itself?
So how are you setting it up? Is it, it should really be the members that are participating. Are there different persons participating in these TGs than who have participated in the TC level?
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly. That's one of the reasons why I want to have community meetings, because I'm trying to drag people and companies in in an easy way. But we could have a formal group. We announced that participate in the TG meetings, and with invited experts and everything. So we prepared the TG1 for it.
Yeah.
But the community meetings should definitely be wild and open and crazy. So I don't see a problem with the TG Ecma TG1 meetings being a bit more informal. We just need to make sure that everyone that has time and dedication to participate in that work will get the invitations.
Right. Okay. Do we want to establish Slack channels for the TGs? Should the TGs have their own Slack is the question.
A separate Slack from the one we have.
Right. We already have a transparency API
Yeah.
Slack channel, and we already have a Perl Slack channel.
I think it's too early to divide. As we go into a more formal process where we have documents that go through standardization, it makes sense to have a separate channel for the the boring work. Excuse me, everyone, but I think it makes sense at the later stage. But
okay, I agree that it's probably too early.
What we can do is, as a low-level thingy, we can at least update the description or whatever it's called of the channel to mention that this is TGI related.
Absolutely. We have done that on the GitHub repo for Koala, so we have references there now to Ecma, both the TC and the TG.
Okay. All right. So I think we've got some paths forward for the TGs. Question to Samina, shifting gears a little bit. When does the opt-out period end?
So for this particular stand that we're talking about, it's a 60-day period, and the opt-out period ends the day of the GA.
The day of the GA.
Yeah,
Got it. Jan, I've got the pull request. This is more CycloneDX core stuff, but we have a 1.6 Ecma branch in the specification repo, which contains all the minor documentation tweaks, changes that did not alter the meaning of the spec, right? So that is essentially almost ready to go. There might be a few things that I have to port from the JSON schema back to the XML schema in protobuf. I'm not sure. But I plan to review that over the next couple days, but that PR is essentially 99% like ready to go at this point. I don't envision any more changes, at least to the JSON schema at this point. Like I said, I might have to make a few changes to the XML or protobuf, but you know, consider it essentially ready, almost.
Great. I already reviewed it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. That was my next question to you, so that's great. Awesome. We've got 2 minutes left. Not a lot of time for any new topics, but does anybody have any words of wisdom, concluding thoughts, anything they want to bring up?
What's the topic for our next meeting, if we've gone through the review?
Well, we still have a lot of work to do for the TGs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we need to support them as the TC, support them, decide on, you know, just some basic things. But after the GA release, I plan to, assuming it's okay with the rest of the group, The original plan was to reschedule these meetings so that it's every other week or once a month or something like that. There's not going to be a need for weekly meetings anymore.
No, exactly.
So once the GA happens, which is the end of this month, then we can go back to a normal kind of cadence. There's no reason for us to meet so frequently.
We use that energy for the TGs then.
Exactly. I'm still going to keep it blocked off on my calendar.
So you have time to work.
Exactly. Actually get stuff done, right?
Yeah. Know that feeling.
Yeah.
If there's ever any help, Steve, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job with all the stuff, and there's so much a word that you learned that I don't want to. But if there's ever any help with any of this drudge work, please feel free to reach out. I mean, the worst
Absolutely.
that we can
Thank you,
say is
Lars.
no.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Would there be interest? There's a question from Ashley in the chat. Interest in convening a small work to focus on the guides? Yes, absolutely. We actually have a guides channel, Ashley, in the Slack. So check out that channel. There's a guides repo. Ping me on Slack though. Let's work on the guides together, because my capacity after all this Ecma stuff, this documentation stuff is complete. My capacity will go down quite a bit, and I'll actually have time to actually look at the guides again.
Well, yeah, I figure we just have a bunch of momentum out of some of the ideas that have come out of reviewing the spec, that it'd be great to like leverage that into some momentum on the guides.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
You're stealing the momentum I need for Koala, Ashley. Back off.
I
This is
think there's
not a
enough
net
momentum to keep every.
Not net zero. Everybody gets enthusiasm and momentum.
All right, everyone. We are at time. So thank you so much for your time today, and have a great rest of your day. Cheers.
Steve,
The same to all of you.
Steve,
Right.
could you hear
Bye.
me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you send me a link to making a meeting with you so we can then review anything? I lost your link, sorry,
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely.
on email or just on the chat before we end the call. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good.
Yes, thanks for everything. I'm going to review the document and I'll come back to you with the structure, any of those issues, which there will be some, but we'll get it done.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
Let's see. Selena.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, you got it?
All right, great. So now I'll end the call. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks. Cheers.